At 2:13 in the morning, Nia Bennett found enough money to change her life. It was sitting inside a black leather portfolio beneath a chair in Suite 41008 of the Whitmore Grand Hotel in Manhattan. She almost didn't open it. Almost. The suite had been vacated less than an hour earlier, and Nia was halfway through restoring the room for the next guest when she noticed the portfolio wedged between the velvet chair and the wall. She pulled it free, expecting business papers. Instead, the zipper opened to reveal several thick envelopes. One had split slightly at the corner. Inside were crisp $100 bills. Nia stopped breathing. She looked toward the open doorway. The hallway was empty. She looked back at the money. Then she slowly removed the envelope and counted only enough to understand what she was holding. $10,000. There were 8 envelopes. $80,000. Nia's fingers tightened around the leather case. At home, an eviction warning sat beneath a magnet on her refrigerator. Her mother's medical rehabilitation center wanted another payment by Friday. Her 12-year-old daughter, Zoe, needed a new laptop for school because the borrowed one she had been using had finally stopped charging. And Nia herself had exactly $63.17 available until payday. $80,000 was sitting in her hands. No witnesses, no guest, no supervisor, no camera inside the suite. For perhaps the longest 10 seconds of her life, Nia Bennett stood completely alone, with a choice that could solve almost every problem waiting for her at home. Then she heard something, her daughter's voice. Not literally, a memory. 3 weeks earlier, Zoe had asked her a question while they were washing dishes together. "Mom, why do you always tell me doing the right thing matters if people who cheat sometimes get ahead?" Nia hadn't known whether her answer had been good enough. She had simply said, "Because getting ahead isn't worth becoming someone you don't respect." Now, standing inside one of the most expensive hotel suites in New York City with $80,000 in her hands, Nia realized that some lessons didn't become real until keeping them became expensive. She returned the envelope to the portfolio, zipped it closed, and walked toward hotel security. What Nia didn't know was that the portfolio belonged to Malcolm Whitmore, the billionaire founder of the very company whose name appeared above the hotel's entrance. She also didn't know that Malcolm would eventually watch the security footage of her carrying it downstairs. But the money wasn't what would capture his attention. It was what Nia did afterward. At 2:37 a.m., after returning $80,000 she desperately needed, she sat alone in an employee corridor, removed a battered textbook from her backpack, and began studying. Malcolm would pause the footage, zoom in on the title, and ask one question that would expose a truth about his company no executive in his boardroom was prepared to answer. Why was one of his most capable employees cleaning hotel rooms at 2 in the morning when she had been trying for years to move up? Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Every night before Nia Bennett went to work, she performed the same ritual. At 8:40 p.m., she stood in the doorway of her daughter's bedroom and watched Zoe sleep. Sometimes for 10 seconds, sometimes for a full minute. She never woke her. She simply watched. Zoe was 12 now, old enough to understand that her mother worked nights but still young enough to leave the hallway light on until Nia left. That Tuesday evening was no different. A science poster covered half the bedroom wall. Library books were stacked beside the bed. A cracked tablet sat charging on the desk even though both of them knew the charging port barely worked anymore. Zoe slept curled beneath a purple blanket. Nia smiled. "Good night, baby." She pulled the door almost closed. Her Aunt Denise was already sitting in the living room, wearing reading glasses and working through a crossword puzzle. "You packed something to eat?" Nia lifted a plastic container from her bag. "Chicken, rice, and broccoli." Denise looked over her glasses. "Enough?" "Yes. For a normal human being, or enough according to Nia." Nia laughed. "Good night, Aunt Denise." "That means no. It means I'm going to miss my train." Denise shook her head. At 63, Denise Bennett had spent most of her life saying exactly what she thought and very little of it, quietly. She pointed toward Nia's backpack. "You studying tonight?" "If it's slow." "You said that yesterday." "And I studied yesterday." 20 minutes. 23. Denise smiled despite herself. You always were stubborn. Nia kissed her cheek. I learned from professionals. She was almost through the door when Denise called after her. Nia. She turned. The older woman's expression had softened. You don't have to prove something every minute of every day. Nia knew what she meant. The 2 jobs. The online courses. The certification exam. The applications. The constant effort to turn one difficult year into a better next year. Nia smiled. I'm not proving anything. Denise raised an eyebrow. Then what are you doing? Building? She closed the door before her aunt could answer. Outside, Harlem was alive despite the cold. Cars moved slowly along wet streets. Music drifted from a restaurant on the corner. A delivery cyclist sped past with a bright insulated bag strapped to his back. Nia pulled her coat tighter and headed toward the subway. At 37, she had mastered the art of moving quickly without appearing rushed. She was beautiful in the kind of way exhaustion could not completely hide. Her deep brown skin remained smooth despite the cold air. Her dark eyes were expressive and observant. She wore her natural black hair pulled into a neat low bun for work, and even in an inexpensive wool coat she carried herself with quiet elegance. People sometimes mistook that composure for ease. It wasn't. Composure was simply something Nia had practiced. She had learned years earlier that panic rarely made a problem smaller. At 9:32 p.m., she entered the employee entrance of the Whitmore Grand. The hotel occupied 43 floors of polished stone, glass, brass, and carefully controlled perfection. Guests paid more for one night in certain suites than Nia earned in a month. The lobby smelled faintly of white tea and cedar. Fresh flowers arrived every morning. The marble floors reflected chandeliers imported from Italy. Everything about the Whitmore Grand whispered abundance. Very little of that abundance reached the basement employee entrance. Downstairs, fluorescent lights illuminated gray lockers and concrete walls. Nia changed into her housekeeping uniform, clipped on her name badge, and tied her apron. Her friend Rochelle Freeman was already there. Rochelle was 42, stylish even in uniform, with caramel brown skin, short natural curls, and the ability to turn almost any complaint into comedy. She looked at Nia. No. Nia stopped. What? You brought the book again. Nia looked at the textbook sticking out of her backpack. So? You need sleep. I'll sleep after the exam. The exam is 6 weeks away. Exactly. Rochelle stared at her. You hear yourself? Nia laughed. I hear opportunity. You hear opportunity. I hear a woman who is going to fall asleep standing up and become part of the furniture. Their supervisor entered before Nia could answer. Ladies, we've got 3 late checkouts and a convention arriving tomorrow. East Wing needs to be turned by 6. Rochelle sighed. There goes my glamorous evening. Nia picked up her supply list. Let's go. The work was demanding but familiar. Nia moved through rooms with methodical precision. Sheets removed. Linens inspected. Bathrooms sanitized. Glasses replaced. Minibars checked. Surfaces polished. Towels folded. Amenities aligned. She had developed small efficiencies that saved minutes without lowering standards. She stocked her cart in the order she used supplies. She checked maintenance issues before stripping beds, so engineering could begin repairs while she cleaned. She carried spare batteries because television remotes failed often enough to waste time. No one had taught her these systems. She simply disliked doing the same inefficient thing twice. At 11:18 p.m., Rochelle found her helping a new employee named Kiara reset a suite. You're behind. Nia looked at the clock. 4 minutes. You're helping again. She's new. Kiara looked embarrassed. I told her I could figure it out. Nia smiled at her. And you will. She pointed toward the linen cart. Put the fitted sheets on the left side. Kiara frowned. Why? Because most people are right-handed. Kiara looked even more confused. Nia demonstrated. If the opening faces this way, you grab, turn, and move. If it faces the other way, you grab, reposition, then move. Rochelle stared at her. You have optimized picking up a sheet. I've optimized not wasting 5 seconds 40 times a night. Kiara laughed. That actually makes sense. Exactly. Rochelle shook her head. Woman, you should be running this place. The sentence sounded casual. Nia's smile faded for half a second. Rochelle noticed. Sorry. Don't be. They both knew why the comment hurt. Nia had applied for an assistant operations manager position 11 months earlier. She hadn't even received an interview. She had applied again for a housekeeping coordinator role 6 months later. Rejected. Then a guest services operations position. Rejected again. Every rejection arrived in the same impersonal format. Thank you for your interest. After careful consideration, we have decided to pursue candidates whose qualifications more closely align. Nia had eventually discovered what qualifications meant. A bachelor's degree. She had completed 2 years of college before life changed. Her mother suffered a stroke. Nia left school to care for her. Then Zoe's father disappeared from their lives almost completely. One temporary decision became several years. Several years became a resume gap. By the time Nia stabilized her life, returning to a traditional 4-year college program seemed financially impossible. So she did what she always did. She found another route. Online courses. Professional certificates. Free library classes. Operations textbooks purchased secondhand. Anything she could learn without sacrificing rent. Rochelle touched her shoulder. You're going to get there. Nia returned to making the bed. I know. How? Nia tucked the sheet tightly beneath the mattress. Because I'm not stopping. Shortly after 2 in the morning, Nia entered suite 4108. She had no idea the room had belonged to Malcolm Whitmore. In fact, she barely thought about the name above the hotel entrance anymore. To most employees, Whitmore Hospitality was less a person than an enormous corporate organism. Hotels, resorts, conference centers, restaurants, luxury residences, more than 60,000 workers worldwide. Malcolm Whitmore had founded the company 34 years earlier. Business magazines regularly estimated his wealth above $4 billion. Nia knew none of that mattered to the dirty glasses waiting beside the bed. She began cleaning. 12 minutes later, she found the portfolio. And made the decision that would eventually alter both of their lives. Security Officer Anthony Cole looked surprised when Nia entered the basement office carrying it. Found property? Suite 4108. He reached for the portfolio. What's inside? Nia hesitated. Documents. Anthony waited. And? Cash. How much? I think 80,000. His hand stopped. You think? I counted 1 envelope. There were 8. Anthony stared at her. You walked through this hotel carrying 80 grand? I walked downstairs. You know what I mean. Nia smiled faintly. Can you log it? Anthony pulled the lost property ledger toward him. Absolutely. He opened the portfolio, confirmed the contents, and whistled quietly. You weren't kidding. Nia signed the form. Anthony looked at her. You didn't consider... He stopped himself. Nia raised an eyebrow. Consider what? Nothing. She smiled. Good. He laughed. Fair enough. Nia turned to leave. Anthony called after her. Ms. Bennett. She looked back. For what it's worth, a lot of people would have made a different decision. Nia adjusted the strap of her backpack. Then it's probably good I found it. She walked out. And that should have been the end of it. To Nia it was. The portfolio didn't belong to her. She returned it. Problem finished. Her break began 20 minutes later. The employee cafeteria was closed, so Nia sat on a bench in the service corridor near the laundry elevators. She ate half her chicken and rice. Then she checked the time. 27 minutes remained. Most people would have rested. Nia opened her backpack. She removed a second-hand textbook. Operations Management. Systems, People, and Performance. Several pages were covered with yellow sticky notes. She opened to Chapter 14. Capacity Planning and Process Bottlenecks. Nia began reading. 3 floors above her, Malcolm Whitmore realized his portfolio was missing. He had returned to the hotel unexpectedly after reaching his private residence and discovering it wasn't inside his car. His chief of staff, Rebecca Sloan, was already calling the hotel. Malcolm raised one hand. "Don't panic yet. There are confidential documents inside." "I know. And $80,000. "I know that too." Rebecca stared at him. "You don't seem concerned." Concern doesn't make elevators move faster. Malcolm was 62, tall and distinguished, with rich brown skin, intelligent dark eyes, and close-cropped salt and pepper hair. Age had sharpened rather than diminished his appearance. He carried himself with the relaxed authority of someone who no longer needed to prove he was important. His charcoal overcoat probably cost more than Nia's monthly rent. Yet the object he worried about most inside the portfolio wasn't the money. It was a handwritten letter from his late wife, Camille. Malcolm had carried the letter for 11 years. Rebecca didn't know it was there. Almost nobody did. When the elevator opened, the night manager was waiting. "Mr. Whitmore, security has your portfolio." Malcolm stopped. "They do?" A housekeeper turned it in. "When?" "About 20 minutes ago." The manager led him downstairs. Anthony retrieved the case from the safe. Malcolm opened it immediately. Documents. Cash. Letter. Everything remained. He exhaled. "Who found it?" Anthony checked the ledger. "Nia Bennett." "Is she still here?" "Yes, sir." Malcolm looked toward the door. "Where?" The night manager immediately reached for his radio. "I'll have her brought down." "No." Both men looked at him. Malcolm closed the portfolio. "Don't interrupt her." The manager hesitated. "Would you like us to give her a reward?" Malcolm looked at the $80,000. Perhaps that was what everyone expected. A generous billionaire rewarding an honest employee. It would make a pleasant story. Maybe even a press release. He disliked the idea immediately. Not tonight. He turned toward the security monitors. "Can you show me where she found it?" Anthony pulled up the hallway footage. There were no cameras inside guest rooms for obvious reasons. The footage showed Nia entering Suite 4108 with her cart. 14 minutes later, she emerged holding the portfolio. She looked left, then right, then walked directly toward the service elevator. No hesitation visible. No attempt to hide it. Malcolm watched. "That's her?" "Yes." The footage changed. Nia entered security. Several minutes later, she left without the portfolio. Malcolm nodded. "Thank you." He started to turn away. Then something on another monitor caught his attention. Nia. She was sitting alone in the service corridor. Malcolm looked closer. "What is she doing?" Anthony glanced at the screen. "Reading, I think." "At 2:30 in the morning?" Anthony shrugged. "She does that a lot." Malcolm turned. "You know her?" "Everybody on nights knows Miss Bennett." "Why?" Anthony smiled. "Because she treats everybody like they're somebody." The words landed unexpectedly. Malcolm looked back at the monitor. Nia highlighted a paragraph. Made notes. Turned a page. The image was grainy, but the title of the book became visible when she shifted it beneath the fluorescent light. Operations Management. Malcolm stared. "What position does she have here?" "Housekeeping." "I can see that." He pointed toward the screen. "Why is someone in housekeeping studying operations management at 2:30 in the morning?" Anthony had no answer. Neither did the night manager. Malcolm picked up his portfolio. "Find out." Rebecca looked at him. "Tonight?" "No." Malcolm's eyes remained on the screen. "Find out properly." The following morning, Nia woke at 7:06 after less than 4 hours of sleep. She didn't complain. Complaining required energy. She walked into the kitchen and found Zoe pouring cereal. "Morning." Zoe looked at her. "You're awake?" "Apparently." "You got home at 3:40. "That is not better." Nia smiled. "Why are you 12 and 65 at the same time?" "Genetics." Aunt Denise laughed from the table. "She got you there." Nia opened the refrigerator. A red notice remained attached to the door. Final payment reminder. She quietly moved Zoe's school calendar over it. Zoe noticed anyway. "Is that from Grandma's rehab?" Nia didn't turn. "Adults are handling it." "Which adult?" "Zoe." Her daughter became quiet. Nia regretted her tone immediately. She sat beside her. I'm sorry. Zoe stirred her cereal. I could stop robotics. No. It costs money. No. I can join next year. Nia took the spoon gently from her daughter's hand. Look at me. Zoe did. You love robotics? Yes. You good at it? Zoe shrugged. Nia raised an eyebrow. Yes. Then you are staying. But my job is to worry about money. That doesn't seem fair. Nia smiled. Parenthood has terrible management. Zoe laughed despite herself. Nia kissed her forehead. Finish breakfast. What she didn't tell Zoe was that the rehabilitation center had given her until Friday. Her mother, Lorraine Bennett, had suffered a second minor stroke 8 months earlier. Insurance covered much of her care. Not all. The remaining balance had grown steadily. Nia had arranged a payment plan. Then rent increased. Then Zoe's after-school program changed fees. Then the hotel reduced overtime for 6 weeks during renovation. The numbers had never recovered. That was why $80,000 had felt so enormous in her hands. Not because Nia dreamed about luxury. She dreamed about zeros disappearing from bills. By 10 that morning, Malcolm Whitmore was sitting inside an executive conference room. His company president, Marcus Hale, presented expansion forecasts. Malcolm listened for 20 minutes, then interrupted. How does someone in our housekeeping department become a hotel operations manager? Marcus blinked. I'm sorry? A housekeeper. Malcolm folded his hands. Let's say she wants to move into management. Well, there are internal postings. What qualifies her? Marcus looked toward the chief human resources officer. Elaine Porter answered, depends on the position. Operations manager. Typically a bachelor's degree, 3 to 5 years hospitality leadership experience. Stop. Malcolm leaned back. How does she get 3 years of leadership experience if we won't give her the first leadership job? Elaine hesitated. There are supervisory pathways. Do they require degrees? Some. Most? Elaine didn't answer quickly enough. Malcolm understood. He looked toward Rebecca. She placed a thin folder in front of him. Nia Bennett. Malcolm opened it. 7 years with the hotel. Perfect attendance for the previous 14 months. Guest satisfaction mentions. Peer commendations. Training assistance. 3 internal applications. 3 automatic rejections. He looked up. Automatic? Elaine shifted in her chair. Our applicant tracking system performs initial qualification screening. So nobody read them? If required qualifications aren't met, no. Malcolm returned to the file. Who trained the current overnight housekeeping supervisor? Silence. Rebecca answered. Nia Bennett helped onboard him. Malcolm's eyes lifted. Elaine looked uncomfortable. Rebecca continued. She has assisted with onboarding 17 employees over the last 3 years. Is she paid as a trainer? No. Has she ever received a disciplinary warning? No. Guest complaint? None that we found. Then explain something to me. Malcolm closed the folder. How can someone be qualified enough to train the people we promote, but not qualified enough to interview for the promotion? No one answered. Malcolm looked around the table. There it was again. Silence where an explanation should have been. He thought about Nia returning the portfolio. But more than that, he thought about her sitting beneath fluorescent lights at 2:37 in the morning, studying the very subject his software had decided she wasn't qualified to discuss. He tapped the folder. Run the numbers. Elaine looked confused. What numbers? All of them. Malcolm stood. How many employees have been automatically rejected for advancement because they don't have degrees? Company-wide? Company-wide. That could take time. Then start now. He walked toward the door. Marcus called after him. Malcolm, what exactly are you looking for? Malcolm stopped. He thought about the $80,000. Then about the book. The people our system stopped looking at. For the next 9 days, nothing changed in Nia's life. That was important. She did not return $80,000 on Tuesday and wake up wealthy on Wednesday. There was no envelope waiting outside her apartment. No mysterious benefactor paid her mother's bill. No executive suddenly appeared offering a promotion. Nia went back to work. Because integrity did not erase consequences. Friday came. The rehabilitation center called. Nia stood inside a hotel supply closet, listening to a billing representative explain that her account needed a minimum payment of $1,460. I can do $800 today. Unfortunately, the minimum required is $1,460. Nia closed her eyes. What happens if I can't? We would need to discuss alternative placement options. Her stomach tightened. Alternative meaning what? A facility covered at a different reimbursement level. Nia knew exactly what that meant. Her mother had finally begun responding to the therapists at her current center. Moving her could reverse months of progress. When? We need an answer by Monday. Nia looked at the clock. Her break had ended. I'll call Monday morning. She hung up. For several seconds, she stood motionless between stacks of towels. Then she wiped beneath one eye. Only once. The door opened. Rochelle stepped inside. There you are. Nia turned toward the shelves. I'm coming. Rochelle stopped. What happened? Nothing. Nia. I said nothing. Rochelle closed the door behind her. Do you need money? Nia laughed softly without humor. Everybody needs money. How much? Too much. I have some savings. No. You don't even know how much. And I'm still saying no. Rochelle folded her arms. You would give me yours. Yes. So? So that's different. How? Nia tried to answer. She couldn't. Rochelle smiled sadly. Exactly. Nia sat on a box. I'll figure it out. You always say that. Because I usually do. And what happens the day you can't? Nia looked down. Rochelle sat beside her. Being strong doesn't mean nobody gets to help you. Nia whispered, I know. But knowing and accepting were different things. That evening, Malcolm received the first report. Rebecca entered his office carrying 186 pages. You're not going to like this. He removed his glasses. That's becoming a theme. She placed the report down. Over the last 3 years, 8,417 internal applications were automatically rejected because candidates lacked degree requirements. Malcolm stared at her. How many positions actually require knowledge that can only reasonably come from a degree? That's complicated. Try. Legal, accounting, engineering, some finance roles, specialized technical positions. And frontline management? Rebecca shook her head. Not most of them. Malcolm looked toward the report. Then why? Convenience. He frowned. Rebecca sat. When the company grew quickly, recruiters needed ways to reduce applicant volume. Degree requirements became an easy filter. Easy for whom? Recruiting. Malcolm leaned back. And expensive for everyone filtered out. Rebecca nodded. There is more. She turned several pages. Employees promoted internally without 4-year degrees have slightly higher 5-year retention than externally hired managers with degrees. Malcolm stared. So our own data contradicts our hiring rules. Yes. And nobody noticed? People noticed individual pieces, but no one connected them. Apparently not. Malcolm stood and walked toward the windows. Manhattan spread beneath him. He remembered building his first hotel. He hadn't possessed a bachelor's degree then either. He had left college after his father died. Worked, saved, borrowed, failed, started again. If he applied anonymously for one of his own company's entry-level management positions today, his automated system might reject him. The irony was almost insulting. Rebecca spoke. There is another issue. Malcolm turned. Employee 47291. He knew immediately. Nia. What about her? Her certification exam is next month. For operations management, certified hospitality operations professional. Malcolm smiled slightly. So she's building the credential herself. Yes. Rebecca hesitated. And she applied for tuition reimbursement last year. What happened? Denied. Why? The program only reimburses education related to an employee's current position. Malcolm stared. Her current position is housekeeping. Yes. So we won't promote her because she lacks qualifications, and we won't help her obtain qualifications because they aren't required for the job we won't promote her out of. Rebecca gave a humorless smile. That is essentially correct. Malcolm turned back toward the city. He felt anger rising. Not dramatic anger. The quieter kind. The kind that rearranged priorities. Change it. Rebecca waited. All of it? All of it. Malcolm, that's going to involve HR, finance, operations, labor council. Good. He faced her. They can meet each other. Rebecca smiled. And Nia? Malcolm's expression changed. We do nothing for Nia. Rebecca looked surprised. Nothing? Nothing special. But she's the reason you found this. She is. He returned to his desk. And if I hand her a promotion because she returned my property, I've learned the wrong lesson. Rebecca nodded slowly. What do you want instead? A door. For her? For everyone. Malcolm opened the report. Then we'll see who walks through it. 3 weeks later, an announcement appeared on the Whitmore employee portal. Nia nearly deleted it. Whitmore Internal Leadership Fellowship. 24 employees would be selected for a 12-week paid development program. No college degree required. No previous management title required. Applicants would be evaluated through practical assessments, peer feedback, attendance history, and demonstrated problem solving. Graduates would be eligible for supervisory and management vacancies across the company. Rochelle read the announcement over Nia's shoulder. Oh, you're doing this. Nia laughed. You don't know that. Yes, I do. I have the certification exam. Do both. I have Zoe. Zoe thinks you're Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman didn't have rent. Rochelle pointed toward the screen. Apply. Nia remained silent. You've complained for years that nobody gives people like us a chance. I don't complain. You professionally express disappointment. Nia laughed. Rochelle became serious. Here's the chance. Nia stared at the application button. Something frightened her more than rejection. Possibility. Rejection was familiar. Possibility demanded courage. She clicked. The application asked one question that stopped her. Describe a time you demonstrated leadership without authority. Nia read it twice. Leadership without authority. She thought about Kiara, the supply carts, training new workers, resolving scheduling mistakes, helping Rochelle during her divorce, teaching employees how to use the new inventory software. None of those moments had felt like leadership. They had felt like life. She began typing. 3 weeks later, Nia became one of 90 semifinalists. Malcolm did not know. Names were removed during preliminary evaluation at his insistence. When Rebecca offered to tell him Nia's candidate number, he refused. If she gets through, I want to know she got through without me. The assessment took place at a training facility in Brooklyn. Candidates arrived from Whitmore properties across New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. Nia wore a cream blouse, navy trousers, and a blazer Aunt Denise had altered herself. Zoe watched her leave that morning. You nervous? Yes. Good. Nia blinked. Excuse me? My teacher says being nervous means your brain knows something matters. Nia smiled. Your teacher is very wise. I told you. Aunt Denise handed Nia her bag. Go. Nia hugged Zoe. What if I mess up? Her daughter shrugged. Then mess up fancy. Nia burst out laughing. Where do you get these things? Genetics. The first assessment involved a fictional hotel crisis. A burst pipe had flooded 3 floors. 32 guests needed relocation. Housekeeping was understaffed. A wedding party was arriving in 90 minutes. 5 managers had conflicting priorities. Candidates were divided into teams. Immediately, several began competing for control. One man spoke louder than everyone else. Another started writing orders. Nia listened. 2 minutes passed. Then she asked, who has actually handled a flood before? A maintenance employee raised his hand. Twice. Nia handed him the marker. You lead facilities. The loudest candidate frowned. We need one person in charge. Nia shook her head. We need one plan. She turned toward another woman. Your front desk? 12 years. You handle guest relocation. Then another. Events? Yes. Protect the wedding. Someone asked. What are you doing? Nia smiled. Making sure the people who know things get heard. Behind one-way glass, Malcolm watched. He still didn't know which candidate was Nia. But candidate 41 had his attention. The second assessment involved an angry employee. The actor shouted, "You people never listen. Every time we tell management something, nobody cares until it becomes a disaster." Several candidates tried calming him. Nia did not. She waited until he finished. Then she asked, "What did you tell us before it became a disaster?" The actor paused. It wasn't the expected response. He explained. Nia listened, then said, "So you're not angry because the equipment broke? No. You're angry because you warned someone." Yes. And being ignored made you feel responsible for something you tried to prevent. The actor's posture softened. Exactly. Nia nodded. Then before we discuss the equipment, we need to acknowledge that. One evaluator wrote something quickly. Malcolm leaned forward. Candidate 41. There was something about her. At lunch, the candidates were deliberately left without instructions for 20 minutes. It was another assessment. Most didn't know. Nia noticed an older candidate sitting alone. His hands shook slightly. She sat beside him. You okay? Blood sugar. Diabetic? He nodded. Nia immediately opened her lunch bag. I have an orange. I don't want your lunch. I have other food. I have other food. She handed it to him. Across the observation room, Malcolm froze. Not because of the orange. Because he recognized the movement. The same quiet practicality he had seen on the security footage. He looked toward Rebecca. 41? Rebecca smiled. You told me not to tell you. I'm asking now. No? Malcolm laughed. You enjoy your job too much. Occasionally. He watched candidate 41 peel the plastic wrapper from a fork and hand it to the man beside her. By the end of the assessment, 24 candidates remained. Candidate 41 ranked third. Only then did Malcolm receive the names. He opened the list. Number 41. Nia Bennett. Malcolm leaned back. For several seconds he said nothing. Rebecca watched him. Well? He smiled. She didn't need me. Rebecca shook her head. That was never the point. No. Malcolm looked at the score. That was exactly the point. Nia began the fellowship the following month. Nothing became magically easy. In fact, for several weeks, life became harder. Classes ran 3 evenings per week. She still worked, still studied, still visited her mother, still raised Zoe. But for the first time, the exhaustion felt attached to movement. She wasn't running simply to remain in the same place. She was going somewhere. Then came the setback. 6 weeks into the program, Nia failed a financial analysis assessment. Not barely. Badly. She stared at the score, 58%. Around her, other fellows quietly packed their laptops. Nia remained seated. The instructor approached. Ms. Bennett? She closed the screen. I understand. You can retake it. When? Next Thursday. Nia nodded. The instructor hesitated. You seem disappointed. I am. One test isn't the program. Nia smiled politely. I know. But on the subway home, fear returned. Maybe the automated system had been right. Maybe practical intelligence wasn't enough. Maybe she had mistaken being competent at work for being capable of management. When she reached home, Zoe was asleep. Aunt Denise sat in the kitchen. How'd it go? Nia placed her bag down. Badly. How badly? 58. Denise winced. That's ugly. Nia laughed despite herself. Thank you. You want me to lie? No. Denise poured tea. What happens now? I retake it. And, if I fail again, I may not graduate. Denise nodded. So study. Nia looked at her. That's your advice? What else do you want? I don't know, something comforting. Denise thought. You're pretty. Nia laughed so loudly she covered her mouth to avoid waking Zoe. Denise smiled. Now study. Nia did. The next week, she scored 91%. That number mattered more to her than every perfect score she had received before, because it proved something. Capability wasn't never failing. It was knowing what to do after failure. 3 months later, Nia graduated. She was offered interviews for 4 positions. One was assistant operations manager at the Whitmore Grand, the same department whose automated system had rejected her less than a year earlier. She sat across from 3 executives. None included Malcolm. That was deliberate. The hotel general manager asked, "Why should we select you over candidates with more formal management experience?" Nia thought carefully, then answered, "You shouldn't select me because I worked hard." The panel looked surprised. "You shouldn't select me because I've been here 7 years. And you definitely shouldn't select me because my story sounds inspiring." One interviewer leaned forward. Nia continued, "You should select me if the way I solve problems is useful to this hotel." She opened the portfolio she had brought. "I reduced housekeeping supply waste on my floor by 11% without being asked." She placed a page down. "I created an onboarding checklist that shortened training time for new overnight employees." Another page. "I tracked the 5 most common maintenance delays affecting room turnaround and built a reporting system with engineering." Another. "And I know what happens on this property between midnight and 6 in the morning, because I've spent 7 years seeing the problems guests never know existed." Silence. Then the general manager smiled. "Ms. Bennett, why haven't we interviewed you before?" Nia returned the papers to her folder. "That is a question I've been asking for a while." She got the job. The call came at 3:17 p.m. Nia was standing outside her mother's rehabilitation center. When she heard the words, she didn't scream. She didn't cry immediately. She simply sat on a bench. "Could you repeat that?" The recruiter laughed. "We'd like to offer you the assistant operations manager position." Nia covered her mouth. Through the rehabilitation center window, she could see her mother working with a therapist. Walking slowly between parallel bars. One step, then another. Nia thought about how many times life had looked exactly like that. Not a leap. Not a miracle. One difficult step followed by another. "I accept." That night, she told Zoe. Her daughter screamed enough for both of them. Aunt Denise cried. Rochelle brought sparkling cider and a grocery store cake with "Congratulations, Manager" written crookedly across the top. Nia laughed until her face hurt. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to celebrate without immediately calculating what came next. 6 months passed. Nia became one of the strongest new managers in the region. Employee complaints on her shift fell. Room turnaround improved. Staff retention increased. She instituted 10-minute shift huddles where employees could raise operational problems without formal paperwork. One suggestion from a laundry attendant saved the hotel nearly $70,000 annually in linen replacement costs. When an executive congratulated Nia for discovering it, she corrected him. "I didn't discover it." "Then who did?" "Mr. Alvarez." "The laundry attendant?" "Yes." The executive looked surprised. Nia smiled. "He's been telling people for 2 years." That sentence eventually reached Malcolm. He smiled when he heard it. Of course she had noticed. Nearly 9 months after the night Nia returned the portfolio, an invitation appeared on her calendar. Lunch, Malcolm Whitmore. She assumed it was a leadership review. Instead, Malcolm asked her to meet him in a private dining room at the hotel. When Nia entered, she recognized him immediately. Everyone recognized Malcolm Whitmore, but something about his face felt strangely familiar. He stood. "Ms. Bennett." "Mr. Whitmore." "Nia, please." She smiled. Then Malcolm. "Deal." They ate. Talked about the fellowship. Her new role. Zoe. Her mother's recovery. Then Malcolm placed a black leather portfolio on the table. Nia's fork stopped. She knew it immediately. Not because she had thought about it often. Because some objects become attached permanently to a memory. Malcolm watched recognition spread across her face. "You remember this." Nia slowly placed her napkin down. Suite 4T108. Yes. She looked at him. That was yours? Malcolm nodded. Nia stared. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then she laughed in disbelief. I returned $80,000 to Malcolm Whitmore? You returned considerably more than that. The documents? Malcolm shook his head. He opened the portfolio. From a protected sleeve, he removed a handwritten letter. My wife wrote this 6 days before she died. Nia's expression changed. Malcolm handed it to her without letting go completely. I'd forgotten it was inside. Nia looked at the aged paper. I didn't read anything. I know. He returned it carefully to the sleeve. That letter was worth more to me than everything else in the portfolio. Nia sat quietly. Malcolm continued. I came back that night. Her eyes widened. You did? I watched the security footage. Nia's embarrassment appeared instantly. Oh, Lord, Malcolm laughed. What? I probably looked terrible. You looked exhausted. That's the polite version. You looked human. Nia smiled. Then Malcolm's expression became serious. I watched you return the portfolio. He paused. And then I watched you sit down and study. Nia stared at him. You saw that? Yes. He leaned back, and I wondered why. Everything connected at once. The new fellowship. The changed qualification rules. The timing. Nia's eyes narrowed slightly. Did you create that program because of me? Malcolm answered carefully. You caused me to ask a question. That's not what I asked. He smiled. No, I did not create a program to give you a job. Nia remained silent. I created a program because discovering your employment history showed me something was wrong with the way we were evaluating thousands of people. He opened another folder. Your application was anonymous. I know. I didn't know your candidate number until the assessment was over. Nia studied his face. You didn't tell them to select me? No. Not once? Not once. Her shoulders relaxed. Malcolm noticed. You needed that answer. Yes. Why? Nia looked toward the portfolio. Because I don't want my life to become a story where some rich man felt sorry for me. Malcolm smiled slowly. Good. She looked surprised. Good? I didn't feel sorry for you. He folded his hands. I was ashamed of us. Nia became still. Malcolm continued. You were doing everything people say you're supposed to do. Working. Learning. Raising your child. Helping other employees. And our company had built a machine that couldn't recognize any of it because you didn't possess one piece of paper. He shook his head. You didn't need pity. His voice softened. You needed the obstacle removed from a door you were already qualified to approach. Nia looked down. Tears filled her eyes. She blinked them away. Malcolm reached into the portfolio again. This time, he removed a printed still from the security footage. It showed Nia sitting alone in the employee hallway. Textbook open. Highlighter in hand. 2:37 a.m. appeared in the corner. Nia stared at the image. I hate that picture. Malcolm laughed. I think it's extraordinary. My hair looks terrible. You returned $80,000 and went back to studying. Still, he slid it toward her. I kept it because it reminds me of something. What? That talent doesn't always arrive wearing a suit. Nia looked at him. Malcolm continued. And sometimes the people running companies become so accustomed to looking upward that we forget to look around. For several moments, Nia couldn't speak. Then she asked, Why are you telling me now? Because I want something from you. She laughed. There it is. Malcolm smiled. I want you to join the advisory council for the fellowship. Nia stared. Malcolm, I've been a manager for 6 months. Exactly. There are people with 20 years of experience. Yes. Then why me? Because 20 years from now, you might forget what the locked door felt like. His expression softened. Right now, you remember. Nia looked at the photograph again. The tired woman in the hallway seemed almost like someone else. Except she wasn't. She was still there. Not as shame. As foundation. What would I actually do? Tell us when we're getting it wrong. Nia smiled. You sure you want that? Malcolm laughed. I'm beginning to suspect I need it. She accepted. 2 years later, the Whitmore Leadership Fellowship operated across 31 properties. Degree requirements had been removed from dozens of positions where skills could be demonstrated through assessment. Tuition assistance expanded. Frontline employees received paid training hours. More than 800 workers had entered supervisory or professional roles. Employee turnover declined. Guest satisfaction increased. And contrary to the warnings of several executives, profitability remained strong. Malcolm presented the results at an annual leadership meeting. When he finished, one board member smiled. So compassion paid off. Malcolm shook his head. No. The room quieted. Attention paid off. He changed the slide. Photos of employees appeared. We stopped assuming we knew where ability lived. Nia sat near the front. She no longer wore a housekeeping uniform. She was now Director of Employee Operations Development for the Northeast region. But she still carried the same battered textbook in her office. Not because she needed it. Because she liked remembering the woman who had opened it at 2:37 in the morning. Zoe was 14 now. Her robotics team had reached the state finals. Lorraine had returned home and could walk short distances with a cane. Aunt Denise still gave unsolicited advice. Rochelle had entered the fellowship herself and become an overnight housekeeping supervisor. Some things changed. Some things simply grew. One rainy Thursday evening, Nia stayed late at the Whitmore Grand. She was leaving through the lobby when she noticed a young woman standing near the employee entrance. The woman wore a kitchen uniform beneath an old coat. She was crying quietly, not dramatically. The kind of crying people do when they're trying desperately not to be noticed. Nia almost continued walking. Almost. Then she stopped. Are you okay? The woman wiped her face immediately. Yes. Nia smiled gently. That answer looked painful. The woman laughed despite herself. I'm fine. Okay. Nia didn't push. She began walking away. Then the woman spoke. Can I ask you something? Nia turned. You work in management, right? Yes. The woman hesitated. My supervisor said I should apply for the fellowship. Nia smiled. You should. I don't think I'm what they're looking for. Why? I didn't finish college. Nia said nothing. The woman continued. I've been in kitchens my whole life. I know food. I know schedules. I know people. But when I look at management jobs, she shook her head. They don't look like they're meant for someone like me. Nia slowly walked back. What is your name? Jasmine. Jasmine, do you have 10 minutes? The woman nodded. Nia led her toward a quiet employee lounge. She opened her phone, scrolled through old photographs, then placed it on the table. The security image appeared. A younger Nia. Housekeeping uniform. Textbook. 2:37 a.m. Jasmine looked at it. That's you? Yes. When? 2 years ago. You were housekeeping? 7 years. Jasmine looked toward Nia's tailored suit, then back toward the photograph. What happened? Nia smiled. Someone finally asked whether the door was locked for a good reason. Jasmine frowned. I don't understand. Nia sat beside her. For a long time, I thought I had to become somebody different before I deserved an opportunity. She pointed toward the photograph. I thought this woman wasn't educated enough. Another tap. Wasn't polished enough. Another. Was too tired. She smiled. Turns out she was already solving problems. She just didn't have the title yet. Jasmine looked down. What if I apply and fail? Then you learn something. What if they say no? Then you ask what you need to improve. And what if I'm not ready? Nia leaned back. Then getting ready becomes the next job. Jasmine finally smiled. You make it sound simple. No. Nia laughed. I make it sound possible. The distinction mattered. 3 months later, Jasmine entered the fellowship. Nia never told Malcolm about their conversation. She didn't need to. The system was beginning to do what it had been designed to do. See people. Not save them. See them. 5 years after the night of the lost portfolio, Malcolm Whitmore announced his retirement. The ballroom of the Whitmore Grand filled with employees, executives, family members, and former fellowship graduates. There were speeches, videos, awards. Malcolm disliked most of them. Then Nia walked onto the stage carrying something beneath her arm. A black leather portfolio. Malcolm began laughing before she said a word. The audience didn't understand. Nia placed it on the podium. 5 years ago, this man lost this. More laughter. Malcolm covered his face. Nia smiled. And I found it. She told the story. Not every detail, not the amount of money at first. Not her bills, not her desperation. She spoke instead about choices, about systems, about how easy it was for companies to say they valued people while designing processes that never truly saw them. Then she finally revealed the amount. There was $80,000 inside. The room reacted instantly. Nia laughed. Yes. She looked toward Malcolm. And before anybody turns this into a story about how wonderful I was for returning it, I want to say something. The room quieted. I wanted that money. Malcolm watched her carefully. Nia continued. I needed that money. Her voice softened. My mother needed medical care. My daughter needed things I couldn't afford. I was behind on bills. She paused. Doing the right thing didn't feel heroic. Her eyes moved across the room. It felt expensive. Silence. But that night taught me something. She touched the portfolio. Character is not proven when integrity is convenient. Malcolm lowered his head slightly. It is proven when doing what is right costs you something. Nia looked toward him. And then Malcolm taught me something else. She smiled. Good leadership isn't rewarding one honest employee with money and taking a photograph. Several people laughed. He could have handed me a check. Malcolm nodded from his seat. I would have taken it. The room erupted with laughter. Nia laughed too. Eventually. Then she became serious. But a check would have changed 1 month of my life. She looked toward hundreds of fellowship graduates seated throughout the ballroom. A fair opportunity changed the direction of it. Applause began. Nia waited. And because that opportunity became a system instead of a favor, it changed more lives than either of us will ever count. The audience rose. Malcolm remained seated for several seconds. His eyes were wet. Then he stood too. After the ceremony, most guests left. Workers began clearing tables. The enormous ballroom slowly emptied. Malcolm stood near the stage holding the portfolio. Nia approached. You keeping it? He smiled. I think I've caused enough trouble with this thing. She laughed. Probably. Malcolm ran his hand over the leather. You know something? What? The night I lost this, I thought the most valuable thing inside was Camille's letter. Nia smiled gently. It was. Yes. He looked around the ballroom. But losing it led me to something she had been trying to tell me for years. Nia waited. She used to say I spent too much time studying businesses and not enough time studying people. Nia smiled. Smart woman. Very. He handed the portfolio to her. Keep it. Nia blinked. No. Yes. Why? Because it belongs to your story now. She accepted it reluctantly. What am I supposed to do with it? Malcolm smiled. Lose it somewhere useful. Nia laughed. I'll try. Years later, the portfolio would sit inside a glass cabinet at the Whitmore Center for Frontline Leadership. Beside it would be Nia's old housekeeping badge, her battered operations textbook, and a copy of the first internal application the company's software rejected without a human being ever reading it. Students often stopped at the display. Some saw ordinary objects. Others understood immediately. A badge, a book, a rejection, a portfolio. Nothing remarkable by themselves. Yet together, they told a story about how easily potential can remain invisible when systems are built to recognize credentials before character. One afternoon, Zoe visited the center after school. She was 17 now, tall, confident, still obsessed with robotics. She stood beside the display. You really almost kept it? Nia looked horrified. Who told you that? Grandma. Your grandmother talks too much. So you did? Nia laughed. I thought about what $80,000 could fix. That's not what I asked. Nia looked at her daughter. The same child whose voice had entered her mind that night. The same child who had once asked why doing the right thing mattered when dishonest people sometimes got ahead. Nia answered honestly. For a few seconds, yes. Zoe nodded. I'm glad. Nia frowned. You're glad? Yeah. Why? Because if it wasn't hard, then returning it wouldn't mean much. Nia stared at her. Then smiled. You're getting annoyingly wise. Genetics. Nia laughed. There it was again. She wrapped an arm around her daughter's shoulders. Together, they looked at the display. Zoe pointed toward the old photograph of Nia studying. You looked tired. I was. Were you scared? All the time. You never seemed scared. Nia looked at her daughter. That's because courage and fear can live in the same person. Zoe became quiet. Nia continued. Sometimes courage is just fear that got up and went to work anyway. Zoe rested her head briefly against her mother's shoulder. For Nia, that was enough. Outside, another shift was beginning. Housekeepers pushed carts through hotel corridors. Kitchen employees prepared dinner service. Engineers checked boilers. Security guards changed posts. Front desk employees welcomed travelers whose names they might never remember. Thousands of ordinary tasks happening simultaneously. For years, Malcolm Whitmore's company had measured almost all of it. Occupancy, revenue, labor costs, guest satisfaction, turnaround time, productivity. But the most important things had never fit neatly into spreadsheets. The employee who stayed 5 minutes to help someone new. The mother who studied after midnight. The maintenance worker who noticed a dangerous problem before anyone else. The kitchen employee who knew how to calm an overwhelmed team. The cleaner whose process improvement saved thousands of dollars, but whose name never appeared in the report. Those things were harder to measure. That didn't make them less valuable. It made paying attention more important. And perhaps that was the lesson Malcolm carried into retirement. The night he lost $80,000, he didn't discover an honest housekeeper. He discovered the limits of his own attention. Nia had always possessed integrity. She had always possessed intelligence. She had always possessed leadership. Her abilities did not begin the moment Malcolm noticed them. Her worth did not increase because a billionaire learned her name. The opportunity simply allowed what had already existed to become visible. And that distinction mattered. Because too many people spend their lives believing a closed door is evidence that they are not worthy of entering. Sometimes it isn't. Sometimes the person behind the door hasn't learned how to recognize you yet. And sometimes the system deciding who belongs was built using assumptions nobody has questioned in years. That is why Nia never told fellowship applicants that Whitmore Hospitality had given her a future. She told them something different. They finally stopped blocking the one I was already building. Years after Malcolm retired, Nia became Senior Vice President of Workforce Development. On her first morning in the executive office, an assistant asked whether she wanted someone to bring coffee. Nia smiled. I can get it. The assistant looked embarrassed. I didn't mean. I know. Nia laughed gently. I'm still learning this floor. She walked toward the employee kitchen herself. On the way, she passed a housekeeper pushing a cart. The woman stepped aside immediately. Good morning, ma'am. Nia stopped. Good morning. She looked at the cart. The towels were arranged with openings facing outward, exactly the way Nia had once taught Kiara years earlier. She smiled. Who taught you to organize them like that? The woman laughed. My supervisor. Says it saves time. Does it? Actually, yes. Nia nodded. Good system. She continued walking. The woman called after her. Ms. Bennett? Nia turned. My daughter applied for the fellowship. What's her name? Tamika Harris. Nia smiled. I won't be involved in her selection. The woman nodded quickly. I know. I wasn't asking. Nia waited. I just wanted to say thank you. For what? The woman looked down. For making something like that exist. Nia felt something tighten in her throat. She walked back. I didn't make it exist alone. I know, the woman smiled. But you walked through first. Nia thought about correcting her, then decided not to. Instead, she reached out and squeezed the woman's hand. I hope Tamika does well. So do I. And if she doesn't get in this time? The woman laughed. I already told her she's applying again. Nia grinned. Good mother. Trying. Nia continued toward the kitchen. Through enormous windows, morning sunlight covered Manhattan. Somewhere far below, trains moved through tunnels. People hurried toward first jobs. Others returned home from second ones. Some carried textbooks. Some carried lunch bags. Some carried worries invisible to everyone passing them. And some were standing in front of doors they had begun to believe would never open. Nia knew those people existed because she had been one of them. That knowledge became one of the most valuable qualifications she ever possessed. Not the certification hanging in her office. Not the executive title printed beneath her name. Not the salary that finally allowed her to stop counting every grocery item. Memory. She remembered. She remembered choosing between bills. She remembered studying while her feet ached. She remembered automated rejection emails. She remembered being capable before anyone called her capable. She remembered needing opportunity without wanting pity. And because she remembered, she noticed people. Years later, when journalists asked Malcolm Whitmore about the most important decision of his career, many expected him to name an acquisition. He had purchased hotel chains, sold properties for enormous profits, survived recessions, expanded internationally, negotiated deals worth billions. He never chose any of them. Instead, he talked about a security monitor at 2:37 in the morning. I saw an employee studying, he would say. The interviewer would usually smile. That was the moment? No. Malcolm would shake his head. The important moment came afterward. What happened? I asked why. That was the entire lesson. Why? Why was she working there? Why had she been rejected? Why did the qualification exist? Why did capable employees keep leaving? Why did executives know labor percentages better than the names of the people performing the labor? Why had nobody questioned rules that no longer made sense? One question became another, and eventually questions became change. Not because one billionaire rescued one woman. Because one woman's ordinary integrity forced a powerful man to examine something he had stopped seeing. Years earlier, Nia had stood alone in Suite 4108, holding $80,000. She believed the most important decision she made that night was whether to keep it. She was wrong. The decision that changed her life had been made many months before. It happened every time she opened the textbook when she wanted to sleep. Every time she applied after rejection. Every time she learned something nobody was paying her to learn. Every time she helped someone without receiving credit. Every time she refused to let exhaustion become an excuse for abandoning the person she wanted to become. Returning the money revealed her character. But the years before that moment had built it. And perhaps that's why the story stayed with people. Because most lives are not transformed in one dramatic instant. They are prepared quietly. One early morning. One late shift. One difficult choice. One application. One rejection. One more attempt. Until eventually, opportunity arrives and discovers that preparation has been waiting for it. If you are listening to this while carrying responsibilities nobody around you fully understands, remember Nia. Not because a billionaire might walk into your life. That may never happen. Remember her because the closed doors she faced did not accurately measure what she was capable of becoming. Neither do yours. A rejection can tell you that one opportunity said no. It cannot tell you what every future opportunity will say. A difficult season can tell you that today is heavy. It cannot tell you how the rest of your story ends. And honest work may sometimes feel invisible, but invisible is not the same as worthless. Somewhere, perhaps even today, the skills you're building during the season nobody applauds may become the exact skills you need when the right door finally opens. And when it does, remember what Nia eventually learned. You don't need someone to rescue you. Sometimes you simply need a fair chance to show what was inside you all along. And if you are already in a position to open doors for others, remember Malcolm's lesson too. Don't assume someone's title tells you their capacity. Don't confuse credentials with character. Don't look only at where someone is standing. Ask what they've been carrying. Ask what they've been learning. Ask what they've been solving while nobody was watching. Because the next extraordinary leader may already be inside your organization. She may simply be wearing a uniform nobody associates with leadership yet. Years after that rainy night, Nia occasionally returned to Suite 4108. Not intentionally at first. Executive inspections sometimes brought her there. Whenever she entered, she remembered exactly where the leather portfolio had been. Beside the velvet chair, near the wall. 8 envelopes. $80,000. A decision made when nobody appeared to be watching. She would sometimes smile, because someone had been watching after all. Not inside the room, not during the decision. Later, and perhaps that was better. Malcolm never saw the moment she chose integrity. He only saw what followed, which meant Nia's choice truly belonged to her. There had been no audience, no promise of reward, no reason to believe anybody would ever know. That was what made it character. One evening, Zoe asked whether Nia would make the same decision again. Nia didn't hesitate. Yes. Even knowing everything? Especially knowing everything. Zoe smiled. Because it changed your life. Nia shook her head. No. Her daughter looked confused. Nia reached for her hand. Because keeping it would have changed who I was. And after everything Nia Bennett had earned, learned, lost, rebuilt and become, she understood something $80,000 could never have purchased. The ability to look at the woman in the mirror and recognize her. That was the fortune she had protected that night. Everything else came later. So if this story touched your heart, tell us something in the comments. Have you ever had someone recognize potential in you before you could fully see it in yourself? Or perhaps you were the person who opened a door for someone else. Share your story, because someone reading it tonight may be standing exactly where Nia once stood, tired, overlooked, and wondering whether all the effort is leading anywhere. Your words might remind them to try one more time. And if you believe hardworking people deserve opportunities instead of assumptions, share this story with someone you care about. Like the video and subscribe for more stories about ordinary people whose courage, integrity, and perseverance reveal just how extraordinary an ordinary life can become. Because sometimes the person everyone overlooks today is the person who will spend tomorrow opening doors for everyone coming behind her.